Now, as Dr. Batra already mentioned, next up we have a joint keynote address by Mr. Paramjeet Singh and Mr. Sandeep Kaul, authors of The Accountability Clock. Mr. Paramjeet is a sales productivity and accountability coach, and Mr. Sandeep is also an executive coach and consultant by profession. They will be talking about the topic accountability in the workplace. Very warm welcome to both of you, and we are looking forward to hear about accountability in workplace from both of you. Over to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. And I would like to thank Anurag also. He's a great book lover, and thanks for sharing the interest. I'll start with a small story. I think all of you who are here know that in 1953, Edmund Hillary climbed Mount Everest. He became the first person. And the interesting thing is he climbed on 29th May, today's date only. But the story that I'm going to tell is about 2 years back of 1951. At that time, he did his first assault on Mount Everest. And he had to come back. He was just 150 meters away from the peak because of weather. He had to come back. Before coming back, he looked at the peak once. And then he said, I'll come back and conquer you because I as a human being can grow, but you as a mountain can't. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because for accountability, commitment is very important. And it starts with personal commitment. And I think Edmund Hillary displayed that commitment and eventually went on to become the first person to climb Mount Everest on 29th May, 1953. So if you look at, accountability at workspace, all the management principles that you look at, whether it's total quality management or is it leading by example or customer focus, everything boils down to accountability. And it is a bit like a centerpiece of all the cores that a company culture is all about. And that's what makes it also the number one challenge globally for companies at the workspace that they're encountering. Just to give you a couple of stats. So the first time I read about it was when Future of Work author Annie Loher, she did a survey and she found out that 85% of employees at workplace feel that the accountability culture can be better. Either it's not present or can be better. And I thought that it's very high. So early last month, I was giving a talk on accountability at a large firm, a large telecom firm, and we ran the same poll. And the results, what came out, actually 93% of the people, employees who polled, they said that we need more accountability. So out of that, 63% felt that if accountability is better at their workplace, then it will also impact business. And I think that is what actually sums up. So accountability is the glue that links commitment to results. So in the course of today's presentation, I'll be sharing 6 key messages along with Paramjeet. So I'll be sharing 3 and then over to Paramjeet, who will be sharing another 3. And if people who are listening can pick up 1 or 2 messages and walk with it, I think that will be a job well done. And I think we are very passionate about this topic. The reason being that this topic is discussed quite frequently, but there is not much material. Even internationally, there are very few books written on accountability. And in India, ours is the first book that has been written specifically on accountability. So let's start with the messages. I think the first message is that accountability is the jigsaw puzzle. It's the center of a jigsaw puzzle. Like when we were children, we used to play this jigsaw puzzle. There were these pieces all around. And the way we used to solve it is that we used to pick up one piece and put it in the center and then try to fix all the other pieces around it. So if you ask me, it is a bit like that. So it is that centerpiece of the jigsaw puzzle when you're looking at your organization. What accountability culture, if a absence of accountability culture leads to is a gap between what the organization is doing and what it is capable of doing. And that's the performance that's costing business by not having a good accountability culture. In fact, accountability is arguably the highest form of leadership because it involves commitment to people, leaders' commitment to his team members, and his team members inspired commitment back to the leader. And when we create this thing, we are able to create creativity, innovation, and an openness to change the organization. And if these three things are present, then the organization can move forward. I think second thing is about accountability and commitment. Because how is accountability connected to commitments? Because we hear these words. But before that, a leader has to start a journey where they actually understand where they are. They assess where they are and where their team is, and then only they will be able to decide where they want to be. And when we are speaking to a lot of leaders, we realize that building accountability culture is a black box kind of a thing. People don't know what is the first step they need to take. And what we've done is build a series of assessments which individuals, leaders can take along with their team members and quickly assess where they are and where they can go. So now I'll come to the second message, because what do we mean by accountability? Because, it's very important to define accountability. I think more in detail, Paramjit will address in his piece, but let me tell you, we a lot of times use accountability, we use interchangeably with responsibility. And as leaders, we need to have clarity around this, because accountability is our commitment to people, while responsibility is basically some task has been assigned to us. So if you were to look at it, that's why we should see commitments as two parts. One is tactical commitments, and second is relational commitments. Tactical commitments are about tasks at hand, something like you've been given a project to deliver, or a report to be given, or a meeting to be done. And relational commitments are commitment that are done with people. And when we look at it, all the tactical commitments are connected to tasks, and that's why they need to be either spoken or communicated to team members. While relational commitments are unspoken commitments. And those are the commitments which are demonstrated by action rather than by speaking. And I think Anurag in the last session also raised this point, that in the current pandemic situation, I think relational commitments being displayed by leaders and companies have really come to the forefront. The importance we have felt. And relational commitments built through accountability. So what we've seen is most of the leaders, they want tactical commitments, but actually what they need is relational commitments. And the reason for that is what we discovered while speaking and researching with a lot of companies that we work with, is that tactical commitments related to tasks, so they lead to productivity, surely, but they may not necessarily lead to building an accountability culture. While relational commitments are to people, so they lead to setting up the right behavior in the company. And when the right behavior happens, then automatically the productivity is impacted. And that's why the focus should be on relational commitments. Things that we focused on when we are building a culture of accountability, we realized it's important for leaders to have clarity. I think because ambiguity breeds mediocrity. So it's important to have clarity in where we are going and where are we today and how do we bridge the gap. I think there has to be a structured process around that. Second is about ownership, so that accountability and ownership are interlinked, because once we are able to build ownership, then team members will invest their time in delivering, focusing on the results, the goals, the behaviors, rather than ascribing blames or other things. Third is about courage, and courage to have crucial conversations. The leader needs to have courage to have crucial conversation with his team members. And especially in today's time, when he's having the crucial conversations, I think it's very important he needs to build an empathy muscle, which is a muscle so that he is able to listen back from his team members also. Because relational commitments are between people and they're not top down. If we were to try to build an accountability culture top down, what will happen is that it'll create at times may end up creating a culture of fear, and that doesn't build true accountability. And as a leader, I think we have to create safe and psychologically safe environments where team members can really feel comfortable contributing and building towards this culture. Because when you're building a culture, while it is a foundation and it builds your strong leadership, but like a tree, when you're building initially, you also need to protect it. You know, and lastly, I would say is trust. Trust is one of the most important markers about how successful you will be in building an accountability culture in the company. And trust, here I mean not the normal predictive trust, which means if I behave, if I speak something, how you will respond. That's normal trust. But trust in this sense is trust to of where leaders show vulnerability and openness. Because when we are building accountability culture, it's also a behavior and performance-led culture. So there will be a lot of conversations, unfiltered conversations, conflicts, constructive conflicts. So when if there is absence of trust and there are conflicts arise, then what happens in most of the organization is what we get is politics. But when there is a trust foundation, the leaders are vulnerable and open, and at the same time, you see that there is constructive conflict situations, conversations happen, then that helps in pursuit of truth, pursuit of progress. Team together progresses. So ultimately, I think the organization, if it has to be transformed, first of all, the individual leader has to transform himself, just like Edmund Hillary transformed himself and had a commitment to grow, and finally he became the first person. I think same way the leader has to scale new heights. And in the last, I think that my message number 3 is that accountability also contributes to bottom line in 2 ways. First is when we are not wasting the leader or the team on things like affixing blame or finding excuses, what we are doing is using that same time and investing in business to take the business forward. Second thing is building an accountability culture also has a direct correlation to increased levels of employee engagement. And there have been multiple studies which show when employees engagement goes up, employees' confidence about the future of the company goes up. And when it goes up, they're able to innovate. They can have a longer term thinking. And I think innovation is also another critical differentiator in today's time. So finally, both from the bottom line and the innovation perspective, today building accountability culture at workplace is not a choice anymore. I think it's an entry ticket to surviving and thriving in the current times. Thank you.
Thank you, Paramjeet and Sandeep, for that wonderful conversation. And I'm sure that our viewers know a lot more about how to get accountability in workplace now. Thank you so much once again for your time.
Thank you.